Hey everyone, welcome back. Today's project is going to be a Millennium Edition. That'd be 2000 Honda CR125R two-stroke motocross bike. Hang in there, we're going to go around this bike, check it out, see what's needed to be done to get it fixed up, and maybe get this thing back on the track someday. Stay tuned. Alright, so I picked this bike up a little bit ago, so I'm going to do my best to try to remember exactly the circumstances and the description of what the seller told me. This is another bike that I did hear run, just barely. If I remember correctly, he tried to start the bike and gas was just pouring out of the carburetor. He did get it started. And he said it was running fine the day before, but he rode it up the street and then it cut off. So I was also told that it was just recently rebuilt, which is common. You hear that a lot. So let's go ahead and go around this bike, take a look at it, and see, point out kind of flaws that we've got with it and what course of action I really need to take. So she's really not bad looking. Fully accessorized with all the red trimmings. I guess we'll start back here. Now, I have not looked this bike over at all, so you're looking it over with me right now. Let's see what we can find together. I mean, first thing is blaringly obvious is that this thing is going to need a rear tire. It does feel like it is full of air. Plastics are in really pretty good shape. Sprocket looks good. Chain definitely needs a little bit of adjustment. She's got some wear to her, but I think she'll survive a little bit longer. So there's definitely something leaking. I don't know if they just have too much oil in it. Base gasket looks a little bit wet. Like I said, it was oil or gas, I'm sorry, coming out of the carburetor when they turned the petcock on. So we're going to do that here shortly. It looks like it may have had a chain break at one time. We're going to look closely into that. The case may be cracked. Grip ends. This does not look correct here. We may have to get a new clutch perch and lever for that. Those handlebars are, wow, amazing. Don't know if they even put two-stroke in here. It smells good. Yummy. So it's got some indents on the shroud plastics. Looks like it's got aftermarket radiators on it, and that's probably what's causing that problem. It definitely does not have the correct fender on it, but that's okay. Fork seals look pretty good. Front brake pad's 50%. That's loose. Front tire's a little bit low on air, but it's got good canabis. No dry rotting in the sidewall. The pipe over here is damaged, but that's not going to be a major issue. The radiator hose is right against the pipe. That's always nice. Now, here's a little tip when you look at these from kind of far away. And you can sort of tell on these two strokes between 250, 125. Now 125, the pipe's going to come sort of straight out as it does here. The 250 will have a tendency to wrap back around. It'll be a larger pipe. 500s, which you don't see too often anymore. Those will also have a big sweep. Now the smaller bikes, like the 80s and 100s and stuff like that, will also have a pipe that comes out like this, but you can obviously tell the bike's going to be a lot smaller. Sometimes the forks are not inverted like this. Front brake feels fine. Throttle's good, snaps back. Yeah, it's got some juice. Dings and dents in the pipes. Rear brake feels fine. I'm not 100% sure that this is even the right pipe for this bike. This should not be sitting obviously up against the reservoir for the rear shock. When I was loading this thing up in the truck, when I purchased it, one thing I did notice is that the rear shock is a little bit bouncy. There's a good chance that the shock is probably blown out, so we may be getting into the shock on this rebuild. And the rear brakes actually look pretty new, so let's go ahead and see if we can get it started. Well, so far so good. I don't see any fuel running out of the carburetor as of yet. Like I said, it was running out at the pickup location. This thing's also missing an upper motor mount. The rear brake master cylinder reservoir is zip tied up. They're leaking something here. Yeah, there's a heck of a rattle there. We're definitely going to have to dig into it and find out what that is. After running it for a few minutes, a few seconds I should say, she died, shut off on me. Trying to kick it is very, very difficult. The kicker doesn't really want to push down. There's a lot of drag in the engine. So throw down in the comments what you think might be wrong with this bike. I'm going to lean towards potentially a bad crankshaft. I'm going to pull the top end apart, take a look at the crankshaft, take a look at the big end of the crankshaft and see if there's any kind of damage to it, any overheating, bluing, and also see what else they did while they were in this engine. So let's get going on that. This is what I'm talking about in my other video about getting the bolt kit for this, because whenever you get these bikes, I mean honestly, they just stick any bolt in there. They're different. They don't have the washers, the shims, the cups. That's just the way they do it. They put it back together whatever they can jam in the holes. I like to always put my bolts back where they came out from. Save you a lot of trouble chasing them down later on or where they go. If they're the correct bolts, I guess, but little tip. All right, so we pulled the seat and the side covers off, and another little surprise that we see here is somebody went ahead and put a nice new air filter in here. I mean, it's gorgeous. It's beautiful. It's brand new. There's no cage. There's no cage in here. Like, why? No cage, why? My goodness, this is what you run into with these bikes. So, just a filter, no cage. We certainly need to go ahead and order one of those. the exhaust off, and sure enough, behind there, the cover for the power valve, just not there. It's definitely leaking oil. And we're going to take the whole top end apart anyway, so we're going to be replacing the gaskets while we're in there. And drain the coolant. I took this off. This actually is supposed to have a little copper washer on it. Missing. More expected than shocked. Gotta cut off all these plastic bolts they've got on here. This is the power valve actuator linkage. What this does is it changes the shape of the exhaust port with the RPM to give the bike a little bit more power. When I'm taking my bolts apart, I like to go in a cross pattern, star pattern. It's more critical when you're tightening it up. It's just a good habit to have. I'm not used to seeing such little tiny pistons anymore. Okay, so the crankshaft is down inside the engine here. The connecting rod comes up and attaches to the piston, and that actually feels fine. The wrist pin feels fine. The bearing feels decent. I can already tell this thing needs a crankshaft. Let's get you in here for a closer look. That connecting rod is wobbling on the bottom. When I get the piston off, I'll be able to show you a little bit better. Now, if you're taking these apart, good tip, there's like little circle, half moon circle kind of clips inside of there. You take that off, they fall down inside the engine, you got a lot of trouble. We're taking the engine apart anyway, but I'm still going to take precaution. What I like to do is put a rag in here. When I pop these pins out, these clips out, they don't fall down inside the engine. It's tough to do with the not blocking it for the camera. These things will go flying off into the stratosphere and you'll never find it again. You got to be real careful with these things. And there she goes, but I found her. Now I just bang the pin out like that. That's not something you'd normally want to do if you've got a good crankshaft, but I know ours is bad. Alright, so now that I got the piston off, you can definitely see that's not supposed to have that kind of play in there. Also, this crankshaft should spin nice and free in this motor. And it doesn't, it's really binding. And it has nothing to do with the connecting rod. So either it's put together incorrectly or the bearings are bad. More stuff we got to tear into. I'm just going to go ahead and pull this engine out because we need to get it apart anyway. We're going to have to do a crank replacement. Engine out on a bench here. I'm going to take a look at some of the components. This is our cylinder head here. You can certainly see that there's a lot of pits. Now I don't know if this is from a prior that caused this issue or the fact that something's coming apart in the engine ended up getting up here in the top end. These two strokes are a little bit different than a four stroke as it uses the entire top end and bottom end for the air fuel charge. So any damage to bearings or anything in the lower end could certainly come up through the transfer ports and get up on top of the piston and beat the hell out of it. So this head is probably savable. Our cylinder, it's got decent cross hatching towards the bottom. I don't see any major gouges. I take that back. There's some actual pretty good gouges right there in the cylinder. So this will either need to be bored. I'm not sure if these could be bored, if they're Nickel, if they have to be re-sleeved. There's definitely damage there. The piston, sort of the same thing. The whole top of this thing is just beat up. So this thing's going to need a top end as well. Now on our bottom end here, I'm seeing a lot of shavings down inside of here. That's definitely an indicator of this lower bearing being bad. We already know it is because that has a ton of play in it and it shouldn't move at all like that. So what I need to do now is split these cases. We're going to start off first by taking off the magneto. You do need a special tool to get that off so you don't damage the crankshaft. Now there's all different types of these tools. These here are Motion Pro, but you can find them all over the old internet auction site. This basically just threads in to the inside of this, and they're different for different models. Obviously different models are going to have some on the outside, some are going to be on the inside. This particular one, the threads are on the inside, and then the center actually pushes it off. Comes off very easily without any damage. Because two-cycle engines actually use the lower part of the case for the air-fuel mixture as well, they have to have some way to meter it in and out or block it off like a valve. Since these don't have valves like a four-stroke, these have what they call a reed valve. So here's your reed valves. They're just little flippers that lift up and close to allow air through one direction but not back in the other direction. I'm not going to get into all of how a two-cycle engine works. There's plenty of videos out there for that. If you're interested, I would definitely go check that out. This is the clutch cover. That is gross. I'm gonna go ahead and pull the clutch out. We're gonna inspect it while we've got it apart, see if I need to order one of those as well. Just like the cylinder head, I like to take these off in a cross pattern just to help to not warp the plates. It's more critical putting it back together, but it's something I like to do, taking it apart as well. It's just good habits, you know. The outer pressure plate, little pusher here. Now, there's a rod inside here, and sometimes there's a ball bearing, so there's something you definitely want to take note of. Grab my magnet, wherever the f that is. No ball in this one. We're going to get the center hub nut off. There's tabs in here that are bent over that hold the nut from moving or backing off. You want to bend those down. Give you a better look at that. Little tab here and here. Now when you take this out, pay particular attention. Well, the tabs on this side over here were bent over underneath the thing. Pay particular attention on how all of this stuff comes apart. There may be washers that have to go back in a specific order. If you have any doubt as to what it is, you could always check the manual. Sometimes the best bet, because you never know who's been in here. So here's our clutch pack. See if we could take a look at one or two and just see what kind of condition they're in. Now, the clutches actually look pretty good, so we're going to be in good shape there. Next step, we're going to get this outer cover off. Use a little bit of a screwdriver to help pry this up. You want to really be careful you don't damage the mating surfaces for the gaskets. When you take this off, try to make sure you keep that mechanism for the kickstart in so it doesn't fall apart on you. Now we'll take the inner clutch basket off. Again, make sure bearings, spacers, washers, everything exactly how they go. Take that off and take note. Now I'll take this crankshaft nut off. Same routine here. Spacers, seals, washers, anything that goes, keep track of it. Lay it out neatly on the desk so you can tell where to put it back. Here's our shift shaft. Of course, I forgot to drain the oil. Well, unfortunately, my camera died, so I'm going to use my phone to film the rest of it. So I've already got a bearing here. That's bad. Not a major thing, but just something we got to keep in mind. So I'm going to go ahead and split these cases. That spot we were looking at earlier that I said potentially the chain may have hit, does not look like it. It was just full of dirt and threw me for a loop. think that's all of them. Same thing here, you want to be careful about the mating surfaces. So here's the inside of our case. Hear that grinding sound? That bearing is bad. That bearing is bad. I'm gonna put the nut back on it and just gently tap it out of the bearing. She is in there. The thing got so hot it practically welded itself together. No good. Rest of the bearings feel pretty good. So this needs to be washed up real good. Get a whole complete bottom end kit. Now crankshaft, here's your lower bearing. The crankshaft seems to be in good condition. You get a couple options. You could grab a used one, just don't know what you're getting, unfortunately. Buy a brand new, like Hot Rods, I think, makes a complete bottom end kit. Other option would be to send this off to Ken O'Connor Racing. I believe he's in like New Hampshire or something like that, but he does a really good job. All right, so I think we have a pretty good idea of what we need to get ordered for this bike. Bear with me a little bit. Parts sometimes are a little bit hard to get here in a timely fashion. If you got any questions, throw them down in the comments. I try to respond to any comments that you guys leave. Absolutely 100% appreciate your subscription. I appreciate your likes. It definitely helped me out. Try to bring you more content. Part 2 will be coming up sometime in the future when I get everything back in, and we'll go over putting this bike back together and getting her back out on the track. So thank you very much for watching. We'll see you next time.